I think it's fair to say, Simon, that one of our, if not our most hyped or anticipated games coming out this year has always been Destiny. Ever since we picked up a PS4 at the same time.
Or maybe the reason we picked up a PS4 at the same time, and pre-ordered Destiny on the same day.
Yeah, it went a long way. Yeah, I think actually I did pre-order my copy of Destiny the day I pre-ordered my PS4.
I did, yeah. I might have done Destiny first.
But both of us are huge Halo fans. We fucking love Halo, and Destiny is not only one of the first kind of next-gen style games that I'm looking forward to. It's Bungie let off the leash for the first time in 10 years to do something new that isn't Halo. And as much as I love Halo, I'm quite happy to see them doing something slightly different.
Yeah, me too. And this is, when you say they're off the leash, they're really off the leash. Like, they could have easily just gone for another first-person shooter, but they want to take things up a notch. Like, this is the things they're trying to do, which I'm sure you'll explain to me in better detail than I currently know. They're wanting to define what a first-person shooter needs to be on the next generation.
Well, Destiny is a strange beast now. Obviously, it's been getting hyped for like the last 3 years or something, last 2 years. And, basically the tagline on the earliest trailer was the developers of Halo and the company that brought you Call of Duty. It's just an excuse to print fucking money with the type of tagline. But Bungie have kind of always been a bit vague in what Destiny is going to be. It's going to be like this kind of online MMO first-person shooter hybrid that no one's really done before. A bit like Borderlands, but not really like Borderlands. And it's going to have like a competitive multiplayer mode, much like traditional Halo multiplayer. But no one really knew much about that. It's going to be very customizable and all the rest of it. But everything's kind of been slightly vague on the details. But now we know a lot more. And there was the alpha this previous weekend, which was... Let me just grab the dates there. It started on, I believe, on the 13th of June, and it got extended and ended on the 16th of Monday. Monday the 16th even. Jesus Christ. And it was basically a little taster of what's to come with Destiny, which is coming out on the 9th of September, I believe.
Yes. Sounds right.
Yeah, and this kind of alpha, you had to register your PSN ID to get an email. I don't think everybody got in, but a lot of people did, and it was quite.
Yeah, no, I can tell you firsthand, not everybody got in.
Yeah, I am sorry to drag you into this and just like tell you how awesome Destiny was, but
I'm so pissed off.
Yeah, it's so basically there was the alpha, and it gave us a little taste of what Destiny is and what it's going to offer. And I've finally got a much better understanding of what we're going to be playing come September. And
well, let's hear it.
Well, I'll tell you. First of all, like Destiny is kind of. It's very much like what Bungie was saying, but the kind of devil's in the details. So it is this kind of RPG. It's first-person shooter, and the best way I can describe it is that it's Halo with a little flavouring of Mass Effect, using something like Guild Wars' online system and grouping system, while also incorporating kind of more traditional MMOs dungeons.
Well, you're going to have to fill me in on Guild Wars and how that affects this.
Okay, so basically the alpha is just a small taste of it. Basically, you create a character. There's one of three classes. There's the Titan, who is kind of like the heavily armoured soldier. They've got the most health and the most shields, and most of their abilities are kind of close range, utilising this kind of electrical field their suit can emit. They're kind of like the tanks, the heavy hitters of the classes you can play as. In the middle, you've got the Hunters. Are they called the Hunters? I think they have. I must admit, I didn't play as one of these. These are the guys who wear the hoods. They specialise in wielding huge, massive hand cannon pistols, and a lot of their skills to do with like knives, and they're kind of like I suppose like a sci-fi take on assassins and something like a rogue in World of Warcraft, like a kind of knife wielding badass, I suppose. They're kind of like the sci-fi take on that. And then at the kind of lower end, the kind of squishier end of the scale, you've got warlocks who are, for all intents and purposes, they're a bit like the spellcasters. They can manipulate powers and cast really, really damaging spells, or kind of spells. They're very akin to biotics in Mass Effect. They have massively powerful abilities that they can unleash, but they take the least damage. They've got the weakest shields, and you've got to be really careful when you're playing as one. And basically, you select one of these classes, then you can select your race. There's 3 races. There's normal humans. There's something called the Awakened, who are kind of like pink and purple, very ethereal skinned and kind of slightly glowy humanoids. And then you've got the Exo, who are kind of like, well, they're essentially robots, but they look really badass. They're like something out of Elysium or something. They look really cool. They've got a great art style to them. You select what race, what sex you're going to be, and there's some kind of There's limited character customization that you can do. You can change your eye color, your hairstyle, your skin color, and all the rest of it. But one thing that surprised me, actually, there's no beards in this game.
Really?
And that's not really a huge fucking issue in something that's a game that's a first-person shooter, and the only time you see your character's head is when you're out of combat in, like, towns. The rest of the time, you've always got a helmet on. But, it just seems like such a strange omission, and I really do hope that when the full game comes out, there is a bit more options and a bit more variation in who you can create, because otherwise you're going to end up with a lot of people who look the same in towns which are arguably the busiest area as far as other players go.
Yeah. Well, this is just an alpha, so a lot can change, and putting in some beards is probably one of the simplest things they can tweak.
Well, people keep saying, oh, it's just an alpha. I think calling this an alpha is slightly unfair and misleading. This is not an alpha in the traditional sense. This is...
Well, I've played an alpha, and alphas are barely playable, and from all intents and sounds, this sounds like a nearly completed beta to me.
It sounds like an early beta. It's not an alpha. Alpha to me are when kind of the core systems of a game are complete, but they're not necessarily particularly nailed down as far as bugs go. And then a beta is where all the assets, the kind of more or less finalized assets, are starting to get plugged into the game, and you're kind of left with a more or less finalized product that needs a bit of fine tuning. This is very much sitting on the beta side of the fence. It's not really an alpha, because I never came across any bugs or any problems. It ran very, very smoothly, and it was great. But I mean, once you've created your character, you basically get dropped into a story mission, and the beta has on offer a few things. So it has one story mission. It has a what's called a strike, which are kind of like a raid or a dungeon in a kind of something like Warcraft. That requires a full team, and you fight massive bosses that require a lot of coordination and persistent effort to take down. And then you have a free roam option, which I'll talk about a bit later. But on top of that, you can also visit the kind of town in the game called the Tower, which is very reminiscent of the Citadel in Mass Effect, even in the way that you walk around. You walk around in third person there with your helmet off and go to different shops and stalls and get your gear sorted. And you also have what's called the Crucible, which is your player versus player, your traditional deathmatch kind of style multiplayer. So there was a bit of everything on offer, but when you first start the alpha, you get dropped instantly into a story mission. Now the whole kind of player versus environment and co-op sections are set in old Russia, which is one of the many areas that are going to be in the game. Now, I've got to say, I think this alpha incorporated the entirety of old Russia.
So it was a large...
massive.
Did you get close to exploring it all?
I probably saw the majority of the surface of it. But there's a lot of areas that seem to be fenced off by essentially placing enemies who were too high a level for you to ever tackle. The level cap in the alpha was 8, and I believe the final one might be close to 20. And there were enemies whose levels were so high that you couldn't even see what level they were. They were just a question mark. And I get the impression Bungie had placed these at key places to stop you wandering too far into the depths of old Russia.
Yeah.
But anyway, as I say, when you start the game, you get dropped into a story mission, and you're basically told by your little AI companion, who's called Ghost, who's voiced by Peter Dinklage, that it's, you know what, like, one of the negatives to take away from this is actually maybe Peter Dinklage. While it's really cool that he's doing this, he sounds a little uninterested. It sounds like he's kind of sitting back in a recording booth and just rattling off lines with no context or sense of drama. And I could understand that if they were trying to make him slightly more robotic, but there's no like robotic filter on his voice. He literally just sounds like Peter Dinklage talking. So hopefully they'll tweak that. Maybe it's like a first draft of the audio. I don't think that's really ever something that's done, but it's not quite as good as I was hoping. The rest of the audio was very good though. But basically the story mission is you go through. But what I liked about it is that you kind of get dropped in this really expansive world. Now, while you're on a story mission, old Russia is still an open world, and you can go anywhere you like and just do what you like, but you'll have waypoints that tell you where you need to go. And you've got to make your way through into these tunnels where you fight different factions of enemies and different types of enemies. And it's really good. I mean, straight away, the gunplay is just classic Halo. It feels really, really good. It feels there's a great mix of kind of using weapons and long range rifles and machine guns, getting up close and personal with melee, using grenades to scatter groups. One thing actually, grenades are replaced by your class powers. Mm-hmm. And instead of having like a finite amount of grenades or powers, you have basically. So take the Titan, who's the traditional kind of soldier. He plays most like the Master Chief out of anybody. His base power is to throw kind of a stun grenade. If the blast doesn't kill enemies, it blinds them and stuns them for a little bit, and allows you to get in and finish them off. But when you throw a grenade, there's not like a finite amount they have with you. You just got to wait for that ability to come off cooldown so you can use it again.
Yeah.
So that was quite nice. It mixes it up a little bit, but. The gunplay feels just like Halo. It's really, really tight. And there's a lot of different types of weapons, and I must admit I didn't get to use all of them, but kind of just as an example there, you start off with what's called an auto rifle, and that's essentially the assault rifle from Halo. It's your traditional medium-range, rapid-fire weapon. It's versatile, kind of always going to be useful, meat and potatoes type of weapon. On top of that, you have your pulse rifles, which are very much like the battle rifle, that kind of burst fire, longer range weapon. And then on top of that you have scout rifles, which are essentially the DMR from Reach in Halo 4.
So is there a direct correlation from Halo over to Destiny, like me with expert amount of Halo knowledge, will I automatically find myself aligned to one weapon or another?
Yeah, I mean, it's like one thing that kind of separates this from Borderlands is that Borderlands randomized all its weapons, so which I don't think works all that well when you really boil it down, because what I found in Borderlands is that you ended up with weapons that were statistically very strong, but really shitty or awkward to use because of their randomization. You just didn't have a good feel of them. Destiny's a bit more focused in that if you have a scout rifle, you know that you're getting this single-shot rifle that is capable of headshots and precision targeting. It's very much the DMR from Halo, if anyone's played that. And it doesn't matter if you get like another DMR on top of that, that's more powerful. You know what you're going to get. It's just going to be a different weapon with better stats or different stats at least. So yeah, I think you will. I think as you play Destiny, you will start picking what weapons you like. Eventually you'll say, you know what, I fucking like pulse rifles because I like the burst fire. I'm going to look for them primarily. You may occasionally be tempted over to a different type if you get one that's particularly strong while you're leveling up or something like that, but you're generally going to be able to use your preference of weapon and build a class around that, because in addition to all the weapons, there's a lot of weapons on offer. In addition, at least, to your primary weapon, so these rifles and the pistol are your primary weapons, and you've also got a secondary category. So much like Halo, you can only carry 2 weapons at a time. And the second category is your specialist weapon, and now these are the ones that kind of fit niche purposes. So you've got your shotguns, which are very much a close-up weapon. You've got something called fusion rifles, I think they're called, which are kind of like these. Well, they're just beastly guns that launch superheated projectiles that just obliterate things. They're pretty impressive. They're not a super weapon, but they feel pretty damn good to use. And I mean, I said you can only carry 2 weapons. As you level up, you actually get access to what's called a heavy weapon as well, which generally have very limited ammo capacity, and they're the type of power weapon you'll wheel out when shit gets really bad. And they consist of things like rocket launchers and heavy machine guns. And I didn't really get a chance to play around with them much because ammo was so scarce, and I didn't really ever find a situation where I could use them properly. But there's there's different types of weapons, and you can kind of create builds and stuff around. Like, you can basically carry gear what type you want to use. But on top of that, you got your class powers, and while you only get access to a certain amount in the beta, I'm going to say there's going to be quite a lot of room to maneuver on how you build your class. And like, if me and you end up playing as like the same class, we could be very different in practice to how we actually fight and how we actually act on the battlefield. There seems to be quite a significant bit of wiggle room on how you play. And what I liked about it as well, as you level up, a lot of the new abilities you get have a noticeable impact on how you fight. For example, when you're playing as the Warlock, who's the kind of the spellcaster, your melee attack is essentially like it's like a punch, but it's infused with your magical power, so you probably smash people down. That's kind of what you start with the game with, but when you level to a certain point and level up your abilities, you get a kind of enhanced melee ability where you kind of tear the life force from an enemy as you punch them and rip it away from them to do extra damage. So essentially, when that ability's ready and off cooldown, and you melee somebody, you'll do that ability, and then you're on cooldown, and every other melee attack you do is just kind of your standard one, and it just adds a little bit more depth. It almost forces you to wait and use your melee when the time's right to strike to make best use out of these superpowered like hits.
Yeah.
And every class seems to have variation. Like the Titan, the kind of the heavy soldier version has a melee attack bonus that basically empowers his punch with lightning and creates a slight splash damage around him. But
I'm definitely feeling myself edging towards Hunter for the game. What do they do with the punch?
I don't know. I think they've got a knife, actually.
Yeah.
I think a lot of their stuff revolves around knifing and turning invisible and dotting about and stuff. As I say, I played with a number of them, but I didn't play as one. I didn't get a chance, but the combat is really good. As I say, it feels very much like Halo, and again, it's got a smattering of Mass Effect when you use like biotic abilities and such. It just feels really, really good, and part of that is largely because the enemies are so good to fight. They're a lot of fun, and I can tell you now, you're not going to miss the Covenant from this sound. The enemies here are just as fun to fight, and they're maybe a little bit more varied actually, because the beta actually showed 2 of the 4 enemy factions. It showed the Fallen, who are apparently going to be the main enemy faction, and they're essentially a race of slightly reptilian 4-armed warriors. Apparently they were once a proud space empire, and they've fallen on hard times, and they're practically now a ragtag group of space pirates. And they're interesting because they've got 4 arms, so the kind of the lowest ranking ones, essentially the grunts, are these kind of scrawny guys who are so low down on the food chain they've actually had their 2 extra arms removed as a sign of shame. And then, like, you kind of get progressively worse ones, and the captains, who are the top ones, wear this grand ornate armor. They're very reminiscent of the kind of high ranking elites, and because they've got 4 arms, they quad wield. So in 2 of their arms, they've got like these energy pistols that they'll fire at you, and then the other 2 arms, they've got energy swords if you get up nice and close. And they also have overshields, much like elites do in Halo. So they are pretty fucking hard to take down in a stand-up fight. You don't really want to be going toe to toe with one unless you're pretty damn powerful yourself. So yeah, the Fallen were a nice faction. They were a lot of fun to play. They very much feel like, that Bungie, the enemy, they use quite nice tactics. They move about. They have a lot of personality. They're animated very well, and they're just generally fun to fight. I had a hell of a lot of fun fighting them. But the other faction that you come across is a faction called the Hive, and these are essentially a race of space zombies. They're essentially like an undead faction that have come to Earth, and from what I gather is they drive these giant sarcophagus ships, and they essentially crash them into planets, and then like just spill undead out to take over the place. And there's, in the demo I got to see quite a few crashed sarcophagus ships, and there was loads of them in there, and I didn't like to go in them. They weren't very fun. But these guys are kind of like they're kind of like a cross between, they're like decaying insects almost. Or they've got different classes. Like on the bottom of them, they've got the thralls, which are essentially unarmed slaves that are equipped with nothing but claws, and they swarm you in crowds, a bit like the Flood in Halo. And then you've got the kind of the troopers, who are just kind of bog standard troopers, a bit like brutes. They're a bit bigger than the Fallen. They're a bit tougher. but they're not quite as agile or as I don't know, they haven't got as much utility to them. All they kind of do is stand there, shoot at you, and run away when you get close. On top of that, you've got knights, which are these huge, really fucking tough guys, very reminiscent of hunters. They take a hell of a lot of punching to bring them down, and they also have really devastating weaponry that can take you out very, very quickly. And at the top end of the scale, you've got something that's quite unique in that they're called wizards, and they're kind of like floating liches that cast spells at you, and they're not very pleasant either. But having the two factions stand next to each other, there was a lot of variation in them, and what I actually liked is that apparently nobody likes the Hive. They're like this menace that just scourges the galaxy, and the Fallen don't like them. So if you come across the Fallen and the Hive in one place, they'll start fighting each other. And
I do like it when the AI interacts like that.
Yeah, and they really go at each other. It's a lot of fun because you can kind of use it to your advantage, and there was some really dynamic battles that were going on. So
when you're creating your character at the start, you say you get to pick your race. What do you have to choose from?
Human, what they're called, awakened or awoken. They're kind of like, I know they're kind of like ethereal, pinkish, purplish, kind of pastely coloured people with glowy eyes and stuff. And Exo, they're kind of like robots.
Right.
But they look really cool.
I know you haven't really touched on anything storyline-wise, but are they allies with humans, or are they similar and they're another race that you fight?
The general story of Destiny seems to be that sometime, like 700 years from now, this orb, this moon-like structure comes to Earth called the Traveler, and it bestows kind of humanity with powers, basically magical powers, and it protects them because it basically is like this. It's really atypical kind of. It's really typical good versus evil. The Traveler's kind of like the shield of good. It tries to protect people from what's just called the forces of darkness. And now, I don't know much about the force of darkness, but I get the impression that it is a kind of a legitimate being or race or something that's coming to Earth. And all these other factions that we're fighting in Destiny are kind of its minions almost. It's sent in to soften us up. And we're essentially... The story is that the Travelers basically hovers above the last safe city on Earth, which is the Tower, where it's kind of like the citadel of Destiny. You go there to shop and it's safe, and it's like the social area where you'll see other players, and meet up with them and then join groups and talk to people. It's very, very much like an MMO, like Guild Wars or Warcraft, World of Warcraft, or something like that. When you're at the Tower. But the idea is that you're a guardian, somebody who's been bestowed with powers by the Traveler to go out and try and fight back the forces of darkness and reclaim Earth for humanity. That's generally the storyline. I'm sure there's going to be more to it, but hopefully it'll be quite interesting, because Halo games have always been reasonably good with story, but Halo fiction has always been pretty damn good in the books and stuff. So I hope Bungie get a bit more wiggle room in what they can do in game this time.
And I hope they embrace the depth of story, because they always seem to ignore the expanded universe that they had helped create with Halo. Yeah, they really
it's
the details that nerds like.
It is, yeah, and as long as they're not too intrusive, people who aren't interested, they just go by them, they don't care. So I hope they do go in some interesting directions with this. But one thing that Destiny does do, it creates a sense of just adventure.
Yeah.
So when you come into the alpha, you do the story mission. It's not that long, but you blast through, you get introduced to the Fallen and the Hive, and you get used to the combat, and then you basically get given the overworld map and told what do you want to do. Now, what you can do is you can go into free roaming around old Russia, and essentially what you do is you teleport into old Russia, and the whole world's open for you to walk around in. Enemies kind of randomly spawn in different areas, and you've got to fight them. There's these beacons being dropped, which basically give you kind of short, sharp missions. The very MMO-y. The one beacon asked me to gather a certain resource off the local Fallen population because they needed it. So I had to go out, kill Fallen until they dropped enough of this item for me to kind of hand it in and get the experience. So it's very MMO-y. But what it does tend to do is encourage you to explore. And as you're exploring, if you've got your game set to public, you'll randomly come across other players like an MMO. And it's just really unusual to see that in a first-person shooter. But it's great. you can, you can kind of come across people. I was in a particularly intense firefight in these tunnels at one point, and all of a sudden, another guy popped in from the other side of the room. Was like, oh shit, and we end up fighting together against like these ridiculous fucking enemies, and it was a lot of fun. We never spoke to each other, but there was a great sense of teamwork just in passing, and it was a lot of fun. Made everything feel a lot more dynamic. In fact, what can happen in these free roam sections is that public events can get spawned in. So basically, a specific event will happen, like maybe a raid boss will get dropped in, or maybe a certain enemy. The one I saw was that there was one of the Hive Knights got spawned in, and we were told that we had to kill him before he got to his destination and escaped. So we basically had to chase this knight as he was pelting through these old ruins of this industrial complex, fighting off just random enemies that spawned in while he was trying to get to his extraction point. And it was good. Like, there was just like all of a sudden like three of us running after this guy, completely separate directions, and trying to work together to hunt him down. And it was just cool. It was something that you don't really see much in a first person shooter, and it's what's helped make the likes of MMOs feel special for so long. So
yeah, it's the thing that always put me off MMOs was the sort of just point and click nature of it. I always like the sort of like reaction based stuff you need with a first person shooter, and to bring the elements that I love from an RPG like that into a format that I can is more accessible to me is great, and I can't wait to get the hands. The beta is 3 weeks away.
Yeah, 3 weeks, and it's going to be a long 3 weeks.
It sounds like you had a lot of fun.
Oh man, I had so much fun in this game. It was ridiculous. Like, everything was just a joy. Like the free roaming, I felt like a real sense of adventure. I felt like I was pouring through this lost part of Earth history, and I was just trying to clean the scum out of it to reclaim it. And it was really exciting. There was always a bit of mystery. The combat was constantly fun. You got a nice steady stream of new gear and new weapons. You always felt like you were progressing. You got new powers at a steady rate as you leveled up. And I've got to say, the level cap on this was 8, but it did not take very long to reach that. And Bungie have gone on record saying that this is going to be more akin to Diablo, where you get to the level cap reasonably quickly, but then it's about getting the best gear you possibly can to progress further and further into harder and harder content. Which sounds great, because one of the key things that makes MMOs hard to jump into, especially if your friends have already been in it, or you get there before your friends, is that you out-level each other, and you're still on separate content. And it's been a problem with MMOs for ages. The likes of Guild Wars 2 and more recently WildStar have started to do systems where you can down level to kind of play with your friends, but it's still not the same, because when you down level, you kind of get no reward. You kind of just basically holding your friend's hand and sitting there while they catch you up. And while you're playing, you're not getting any reward. And in an MMO, time is money. You need to be making progress constantly. So the low level cap and gear treadmill does kind of eliminate that somewhat, but yeah, the level cap of 8 did not take long to get to, which I quite enjoyed. But it did give you a lot of opportunity to mess around with the powers, and it did give me the opportunity to try two of the 3 classes out and level them up to the cap in its entirety and try out all the different powers. So that was fun. What else is there? The best thing about this, though, the best thing out there is the strikes, which are essentially the raids of Destiny. Now, these are incredibly intense, fairly involved and long missions that require a fire team of 3 to go in and coordinate against overwhelming odds. And they are seriously hard, and they're seriously long. I think the first time I did it, the one in the demo is the alpha. Is the one that's been shown off before. It's the Devil's Lair, it's called, and the Devil's Lair is essentially a clan of fallen who have this what are called machine gods. They're like these orbs that seem to be their overlords. Have one hiding in this structure, and you've got to basically raid it. And there's 3 bosses, and a few enemies, like kind of normal enemy packs in between these bosses, and it took me about an hour and a half to finish it the first time, which for a first person shooter is a fairly lengthy session, really, for what is essentially
that's a sixth of Modern Warfare 3.
Exactly. And they were fucking amazing, these strikes. So you get paired up with 2 others. So when you're playing with when you're playing the PvE side of things, the player versus environment side of things, the general party size seems to be limited to 3 people. But I get the impression that in bigger scale public events, you can have multiple fire teams linked together. So you could have many more people potentially, but in these strikes, it's 3 people strictly, and you go through as a team. And it was awesome, man. It was so good. I stopped playing on Sunday night because I thought the alpha was coming to a close, but it got extended to Monday. It's actually closed now, I think. But the last thing I did, I thought, you know what, it's coming to a close. I'm going to do one last strike on my Titan, because I've been playing as a Warlock mainly, so I did it on the kind of heavy class. And holy shit, it was the most intense fucking session I'd ever had. I think I came out of it with 246 kills.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. And I mean, just to give you a flavour, like, the kind of bosses you have. So, like, the first boss, you get to this dead end, and there's like these laser grids blocking the exit. So you've got to get Peter Dinklage to hack the control panel and open it. But while he's doing that, you've got to fight off increasingly dense waves of enemies that just pour down on you. And oh my god, it's so intense. The first, there's 3 waves. The first 2 waves are Fallen. You know, they're kind of, I get the impression the Fallen are going to be very much your bread and butter kind of enemies. You know, they've got a kind of troop for every type of situation. They very much feel like the Covenant. They don't really look like the Covenant, but they feel like that kind of utility knife that the Covenant had. You know, they've got something to fill in every purpose. And you've got to fight shit tons of them, including their really badass captains. And on the last wave, the Hive join in as well. So you've got these ridiculously tough fucking undead husks just charging down on you while their wizard things float in the air bombing you with spells. And it's just incredibly intense. And what I liked about it, actually, very much in the kind of MMO sense, if you die in Destiny, you can you generally press a button and you respawn. But in these strikes, you have a 30-second wait before you can respawn. And if everybody dies at the same time, the game's over and you get sent back to the last checkpoint. So it's almost like you failed the boss, you failed to work as a team, you've got to start it again, which can be a fairly lengthy setback depending on what boss you're fighting. But what happens when you die is you have a little marker that your teammates can run up to and resurrect you very, very quickly. So it encourages you to work as a team and resurrect each other, keep each other up, keep each other safe, and make sure the team doesn't get wiped out. So there's a great team dynamic with regards to it. It's almost like a slightly passive version of healing in an MMO. But
yeah.
It was good. It made sure you had to work together. But goddamn, this first kind of boss event. I'm sure there was one part where the Fallen sent a squadron of invisible fucking sword wielding bastards up at me, and I was kind of crouched behind some boxes for cover and popping out, but these guys kind of came around the back and flushed me out. And I'm sure it was so like intense. I think I had to kill 3 or 4 of them with my bare hands just because they were up in my face and I ran out of ammo. And it was just awesome. You were just smashing the skulls in and using your powers, and it just felt really, really good. And you felt like such a badass. And in Halo, when you take out an entire squad of Covenant in like 30 seconds flat and you don't break a sweat, it felt like that kind of sense of high. It was fantastic. But on top of that, you've got the second boss is this giant spider tank called a devil tank or a devil walker, and it's basically just this thing that does not take damage unless you work together and target the soft spots on it, and that takes a long time. And the thing is, despite it being surrounded by an army of Fallen to support it that frequently respawn, it just takes a hell of a battering. I think I was fighting this thing for 20 minutes solid. One of my major complaints actually is some of these raid bosses did have too much health. Even when you are working together and targeting the right areas, sometimes it does feel like it goes on a little bit too long. It's a minor complaint and it can be tweaked, but that's something that maybe Bungie needs to take care of. But the last boss is the machine god that you're kind of there to assassinate. And essentially it's this giant orb that can teleport around the room and bombard you with almost insta-killing energy orbs that you've got to dodge like a motherfucker. It's constantly teleporting around, constantly bombarding you with these fucking really, really powerful attacks. And frequently these dropships come in and drop off like just dozens of Fallen troops to fuck up your day, basically. And the boss has so much health, it takes so long, and it's just intense as shit. And I enjoyed every moment of it. It was just exciting and fun, and it felt rewarding as well, partly because it was hard and partly because you got some good rewards for actually finishing these things. It was really, really good. I enjoyed the hell out of it. But can't wait to do some strikes with like you and Mark.
Yeah.
It's just going to be really, really good fun, and I think we'll probably get into it. I can imagine this is going to be the game we're going to be playing for the rest of the year once it comes out.
Well, what's going to be after that? Like, I don't know anything that's on the horizon that's going to have us. You know, at the minute we jump to Battlefield 4. Even though I'm playing Watch Dogs or Injustice, I'm going to Battlefield 4. This will replace that, I think.
I would think so, yeah. It'll be our go-to shooter, our go-to game for quite a while. I mean, not only is it a great kind of... Not only does it feel like a great successor to Halo, it's got that MMO aspect that, I tell you, when you get a good MMO, it really does sink its teeth into you, and it's hard to break free of a good MMO. And this... I'm not saying this is necessarily a good MMO. It's not really an MMO. It takes aspects of it, but... It's got that added incentive to play it, and it could be like crack, this, man. It really could.
Yeah, I can't wait until we get like a full squad together, because I don't even play Battlefield on my own because I don't see the point. It's never as satisfying when someone else is there with you by your side, digging in.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. And so I think Destiny was kind of like that. I mean, I was enjoying the shit out of it, and I probably will play this by myself quite a lot. Because you can have multiple characters as well, so, you know, it doesn't really matter too much. But I can't wait to play it with friends and you know, probably coordinate and probably get into it, and it'll just be a lot of fun. And even when you get sick of the PvE content, you've got the PvP, the player versus player, the more traditional kind of arena-style multiplayer. And that was a lot of fun, actually. It felt fairly well balanced. People who are higher level didn't seem to have too much of an advantage. I think Bungie have said that they level off the damage people do, but you get to take in all your abilities and all your gear into a competitive arena. And the only game type that was available, I can't remember what Destiny actually calls it, but it's essentially capture and hold the point, you know, essentially Battlefield style capture and hold the point. And it was a lot of fun, you know. There's a lot of deals getting thrown into the mix. There was a good few maps on offer. I think there was at least 2 maps on offer, which isn't bad for an alpha. There might have been more. I didn't play a whole lot of the Crucible, which is the competitive multiplayer, but it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I can see us probably wasting a lot of time in that as well. And actually, what I did like it in kind of traditional MMO fashion. There's actually there's 2 different vendors for gear, high-level gear. It kind of had these in the game to tease what type of gear you could be using at like level 20 and above, if there is an above. And there was one that was kind of for people who concentrated on the PvE side of things, and then there's one for people who did the PvP side of things. So however you want to play the game, you can get rewards and get better gear for it, which I thought was a nice little touch, actually.
So, how long were you on the alpha for?
I played the alpha probably 8 to 10 hours.
So you put more time into the alpha than the vast majority of FPS campaign lengths.
I probably put more time into the alpha than I have into Watch Dogs over the last like 3 weeks.
Probably, yeah.
It was just fun. I had a great time, and what gets me most excited is that it almost feels like it's just a taste of what's to come. I think this is a game that's going to last me a long time, and I'm going to have a blast playing it. The alpha was relatively smooth. I never had any problems, so I think Bungie got the kind of technical side nailed down. As I say, my only real complaint was Peter Dinklage was a bit of a letdown, but I don't know. Will he be like that in the final product? I don't know. I hope not, but I don't know. And to be honest, it won't spoil it for me. It really won't. I just think it's going to be great. And to be fair, there was a lot of other voice actors, recognisable voice actors in there. I think Peter Stormare might have been a voice actor in it.
Nice.
You've also got Lance Reddick, who's anyone who's watched The Wire will know, and I can't remember her name. But she's one of the Quarian admirals in Mass Effect. She's the woman. She's got quite an exotic accent, and I think she's also in X-Men 3.
All right, I was getting confused there. I was going to say the Counselor Troy from Star Trek, but she's Liara's mother, isn't she?
Yes. No, she's one of the Quarian admiral boards. She's the woman who kind of likes. Tally. I don't know the woman's name, but she's one of the doctors who tries to operate on Angel in X-Men Last Stand. She's got quite like an exotic accent. She's also one of the voice actresses in this, so it's got quite a nice little cast. I've got to say, Lance Reddick was fucking awesome in his part. He just delivers some of these like really kind of quite silly lines with such gravitas. It was awesome.
Is it Claudia Black you're thinking of?
You say?
Claudia Black?
No, I know, no. She. I wouldn't describe Claudia Black as exotic.
I don't know. I would just work like gradually researching, but I'll give up.
Yeah, I can't remember what the hell she's called. She's not like a particularly well-known actress as such. She just appears in things here.
Yeah, I know who you mean. If she's the one in X-Men.
Yeah, she was actually. Interesting fact. There, I've got a name. Jesus Christ, I cannot pronounce that. I think it's Shora. Oh God damn it, Shora Agadeshlu. I don't know. That's probably very, very wrong, but I think that's her name. And if I remember rightly, is that her? Yeah, it is her. If I remember rightly, she was actually going to be the original voice actress for Liara.
Oh, right.
Point, but she had to drop out. So there you go. You live and learn, eh?
What's the internet consensus tweeted English? Have you read anywhere else that he's disappointing or?
Yeah, the general consensus on the internet is that he's disappointing. In fact, my opinions are actually quite mild compared to most people's. I don't think it's too bad. It's just not particularly. It's just slightly odd. It doesn't like. It sounds like he is literally just sitting there reading lines, and Bungie weren't able to give him any context of what he was actually meant to be talking about.
I'm glad you shifted the blame away from Peter Dinklage.
I think it can't be down to him solely. I mean, we know he's a good actor. But, like, just for example, when the Hive first introduced, he's like, oh no, it's the Hive. And I'm like, oh really? Should I be scared of these guys? Because, it's pitch black dark and the music's going fucking crazy. But yeah, it's just quite flat. And then other times it sounds quite good. Like, there's some lines that, I quite liked, and it's just flip-flops from kind of... It flip-flops either side of kind of mediocrity. It doesn't get ever particularly great, but it's never horrible. It's okay. It just seems like something that's out of place for such a otherwise well-crafted game. Because that's one thing I never actually said is this is fucking beautiful. This looks great, this game. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And it runs very well as well. There was no dips in frame rates, and I didn't even get any lag when I was playing, which is surprising on my shitty connection. But
what about the music?
The music, oh my god, it's so good. It's it's Marty O'Donnell, man. It's excellent. Obviously, I would think it's only a sample of the whole score, but it's very, very good.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything quite as memorable as the Halo theme tune, the original Halo theme tune, but then again, he might be saving that for the main game. But overall, the music's very, very good, and it's just a shame that Marty O'Donnell's kind of... there's that cloud around him at the moment, getting the sack and suing Bungie, and something bad's obviously happened regarding Destiny, but...
Well, after you said how good the music was, I was going to crack a joke about how someone like Marty O'Donnell's got job security.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Well, I mean, they've said Destiny's going to be like a 10-year franchise. It'd be very interesting to see who takes up the mantle if this doesn't get sorted out.
It will be indeed. Maybe Paul McCartney will take over completely.
Oh god. Did he help do the music, did he?
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't remember that.
Maybe it was him flexing his muscles that pushed O'Donnell out.
I'd rather have O'Donnell.
Yeah.
O'Donnell.
Well, it sounds like you've had a great time, and I look forward to joining you on the battlefields at some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of ringing endorsement. Obviously, this isn't a review; it's kind of just first impressions of the alpha, the first alpha. But obviously, we've got the beta in a few weeks, which I'm very much looking forward to playing. But just to tell you how much I enjoyed this game, I've taken like 3 days off to play it when it comes out. I just thought, fuck it, I'm just going to play it because if I buy it, I know I'm just going to be sitting at work thinking about it. So,
yeah, well, you're not going to get anything done, are you?
So yeah, I think it's going to be spectacular. I'm very excited to see what the final product is going to be like, and it's not too far away.